Tonight the heavens are silent, the room is dark, you're praying, but nothing moves, you're crying, but there's no answer. And you think, maybe I did something wrong, maybe God turned his face, maybe he's finished with me, but what if I told you the silence is not punishment, it's preparation? What if the hunger you feel tonight isn't to harm you, but to strip away everything that's ever lied to you about what fulfillment really is? What if this isn't the end of the story, but the beginning of a divine appointment? Because when God speaks of starvation, he's not speaking about your stomach. He's speaking about your soul. He's not withholding food. He's withholding false comfort. He's not punishing you. He's purging you. Tonight, the things that used to feed you no longer satisfy. The attention, the applause, the money, the scrolling, the distractions. They don't fill the gap anymore. Why? Because God is setting the stage for something holy. We don't grow on the mountaintop, we grow in the midnight hour. In the silence, in the absence, in the ache, that's where heaven shapes warriors, that's where prophets are forged. That's where destiny is awakened, but the flesh doesn't like to be starved. No, it rebels, it screams. It bargains, it says, just one more hit of distraction, just one more fix of comfort. But heaven says no. Tonight you'll starve, not because I hate you, but because I love you too much to let you feast on what kills you. You see, God removes to restore, he wounds to heal, he withholds to prepare, because anything God allows you to starve from, he plans to replace with something far greater. Elijah once sat by the brook. Every day the ravens came with food. Every day water flowed, but then the brook dried up. The birds stopped flying, the food stopped coming. Why? Because God was calling him to move. The place that once provided became the place of divine drought, not to punish Elijah, but to push him forward. Some of you are sitting by dried-up brooks tonight. The ravens stopped coming, the source stopped flowing. And you think it's death, but it's actually destiny. God doesn't starve you to shame you. He starves you to shift you. He starves you to stir your spirit, because what's coming is too holy to be handled by a heart that's still attached to broken systems. Tonight is not the end. It's the wilderness before the promised land. Think of Israel. They were slaves. Then God brought them out, and what did they walk into? A feast? No, a wilderness, a desert, hunger. And every time they felt the hunger, they complained. Take us back to Egypt. They said, at least we had food there. But they weren't hungry because God failed them. They were hungry because God was delivering them. Egypt fed their bodies, but poisoned their souls. The wilderness stripped them clean. It revealed what they still loved. It exposed what they still feared. It brought their idolatry to the surface. Why? Because the promised land wasn't just a place. It was a people prepared to enter it. God is not interested in feeding Egypt in you. He wants to kill it. He wants to starve it. He wants to bring you to the place where your only hunger is for him. So yes, tonight you'll starve. You'll sit in the silence. You'll feel the ache. You'll wrestle the shadows. But listen, the silence is sacred. The ache is holy, because the God who hides himself is the same God who reveals himself in the fire, in the whisper, in the breaking of bread. David wrote, I have been young, and now I am old, yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken. But he also wrote, my tears have been my food day and night. The man after God's own heart had nights of starvation, but he didn't curse the night. He used it to cry out for morning. What you call emptiness, God calls awakening. What you feel as silence, God uses as surgery. And what you see as the absence of God is often just the moment before he steps into the fire. You don't need to fear the night. You need to endure it, because tonight may starve you, but it won't destroy you. It's breaking the old man. It's calling the new man. It's draining the lies so he can fill you with truth. It's removing your idols so he can be your only source. And it's preparing you for a morning where the table is already set, the oil is already flowing, and the bread you eat will not be of this world. So don't pray for escape, pray for endurance, because the night may last long, but the morning is already written. And then he said, I will break the system that broke you, because how can you be healed while still clinging to the thing that crushed you? How can you be whole while still depending on the very system that made you hollow? You see, the reason for the starvation, the silence, the discomfort, it's not random. Heaven is intentional. There are no wasted nights in the kingdom. And so, when the system fails, it's not chaos. It's divine surgery. God is letting the system collapse so you can finally be free. We spend so much of our lives trying to fix broken things that were never meant to last. We try to mend relationships built on lies. We try to find comfort in success, security in money, identity in titles. But these things, they were never built to carry your soul. They were built by men, shaped by flesh, and sustained by pride. And when that system fails, we call it a crisis, but heaven calls it a rescue. You were never meant to live off what enslaved you. God allowed the bread to run out because you kept feeding off Egypt. You kept going back to the same well that only gives muddy water. So he dried it up. He let the connection break. He let the plan fall through. Not because he rejected you, but because he's preparing you. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. Most of us don't change while things are working. We don't surrender when the system still satisfies. We cling to the familiar, even when it's toxic, even when it's hollow, even when it slowly kills us. We don't let go of Egypt until we starve in the wilderness. And it's in that starvation, that system failure, where God steps in and says, now you're ready. Ready for what? Ready for what's real. Ready for what doesn't break. Ready for what doesn't rust, rot, or run dry. But first, he has to tear down the counterfeit so he can build you up in truth. You've been taught to depend on the visible. You've been trained to trust the system. But God didn't call you to survive on what man made. He called you to walk by faith. And faith doesn't need a system. Faith doesn't need a guarantee. Faith walks when the way isn't clear. Faith obeys when the signs don't align. Faith says, even though the system failed, my God hasn't. Remember when Peter walked on water. As long as his eyes were on the Savior, the storm had no power. But when he shifted his focus back to the system, the wind, the waves, the logic of the natural world, he sank. That's what systems do. They remind you that gravity exists. They remind you that man is limited. But God says, I'm not bound by systems. I am the system. I am the source. I am that I am. So when God allows the system to collapse, when the job ends, when the plan crumbles, when the people walk away, don't curse the moment. Don't panic. Don't go scrambling to rebuild what he destroyed. Because what you call a breakdown, God calls a breakthrough. The Israelites walked through the wilderness because God had to break their dependency on Pharaoh before they could become warriors in the promised land. They had been slaves for too long. They didn't just need freedom from chains, they needed freedom from the system that taught them to think small, live scared, and beg for scraps. So God starved them. He starved their nostalgia. He starved their comfort. He broke the system. And in its place he gave them something far more powerful. A pillar of fire by night, a cloud by day, manna from heaven, water from rocks. Not a system, a miracle. You see, miracles don't come when you trust the system. Miracles come when the system dies and your faith rises. So, if you feel like everything is falling apart, if what once worked no longer does, rejoice. It means God is near. It means the idols are being toppled. It means the altar is being cleared. Don't ask him to repair what he's trying to replace. Don't mourn the system. Let it die. Let it crumble, because what's coming doesn't fit inside it anyway. He's building something new. not on sand, not on flesh, but on rock, on truth, on His Word. And when the new comes, you'll understand why the old had to break, why you had to starve, why you had to be emptied, because what you're about to walk into, no system could have given you. No man could have made it, only heaven, only the hand of God, and that's why tonight you'll starve. And then the voice came again, not loud but sharp, like a whisper that cuts through stone. The starvation is not physical, it is spiritual. You thought it was your body that was empty. You thought it was your bank account, your fridge, your opportunities. But no, the famine you feel has nothing to do with bread. It's your soul that's starving, and the tragedy isn't just that you're hungry, it's that you've been feeding on things that were never food in the first place. You see, there's a hunger inside you that no earthly thing can fill. You can chase the applause of man, but it fades. You can pile up achievements, but they rust. You can flood your life with entertainment, distraction, even relationships, but when the night comes and the noise dies, the ache remains. Because the famine is spiritual, the emptiness is not in your hands, it's in your heart. And here's what's more dangerous. You've been conditioned to silence that hunger instead of confronting it. You feel the emptiness, and instead of asking, God, what are you doing? You numb it with another scroll, another binge, another purchase, another smile that doesn't reach your eyes. But what if that ache, that gnawing inside, isn't a problem to solve but a message to hear? What if that hunger isn't weakness, but a divine invitation? What if that ache in your spirit is God saying, come deeper, because He never created you to live off the surface. He never called you to survive on crumbs. You weren't made for shallow waters. You were made for the deep, for the presence of the holy, the eternal, the consuming fire that no temporary fix can ever substitute. That's why the old things stopped working. That's why the joy you once had in empty routines has faded. That's why the smiles are forced, the laughter feels hollow, the excitement wears off by morning, because your soul has outgrown the food of Egypt. And now heaven is awakening your appetite for something more. And here's the thing about spiritual hunger. It doesn't kill you, it cleanses you. It reveals every idol, every fake comfort, every dependency you didn't know you had. It exposes the things you thought were keeping you alive, but were actually keeping you from truly living. The hunger comes not to destroy, but to drive you. It drives you out of routine, out of religion, out of ritual, and into relationship, into fire, into fullness, into the presence of the one who is bread, who is living water, who doesn't just satisfy hunger, He defines what true satisfaction is. You remember the story, the people gathered 5,000 strong. They were hungry, and the disciples said, send them away so they can buy food. But Jesus said, you feed them. Why? Because He wasn't just trying to fill their stomachs, He was trying to awaken their eyes. He wanted them to see that the true bread was standing right in front of them. And He took the loaves, He lifted them, He broke them, and He fed them all, not with what they brought, but with what He blessed. Some of you are starving spiritually because you're still trying to feed yourself on broken things. You're chasing spiritual fullness through physical means. You're looking for a holy answer in human systems. But the hunger you feel wasn't meant to be silenced. It was meant to lead you to the feet of the one who can feed you in ways no system can. When the prodigal son found himself surrounded by pigs, longing to eat what they were eating, it wasn't a physical crisis, it was a soul revelation. He realized something deep inside. My Father's house has more than enough. That moment of spiritual hunger led him back home. That's what God is doing with you now. He's letting the lesser things fall through your hands so you'll return to the source. So you'll realize it was never about the paycheck, never about the crowd, never about the title. You've been hungry for God, and nothing else will do. So don't run from the hunger. Let it rise, let it refine. Let it redirect your steps to the secret place where no applause echoes, where no distraction survives, where only you and God dwell in silence so full, it speaks louder than any crowd. You've tried everything else. Now try the one who made you, because this starvation isn't to kill you. It's to call you, and that's why tonight you'll starve. And then the voice came like thunder wrapped in mercy. The morning after starvation brings supernatural provision. Because the night doesn't last forever, the hunger doesn't win, the silence doesn't get the final word. There is a morning, there is a dawn, there is a shift, but that morning doesn't come to those who numb the hunger. It comes to those who endure it, who walk through the darkness holding onto a promise they can't yet see. You see, the mystery of God is that He often waits until the last moment, not because He's cruel, but because He's holy. He lets the night stretch longer than your comfort zone. He lets the brook run dry. He lets the stomach growl. He lets the soul ache. But when the night has finished its work, when the idols have been shattered, when the system has collapsed, when the spirit has been emptied of pride and pretense, then comes the morning. But not just any morning, not the kind you wake up to after a restless night. No, this is a morning unlike any other. This is the morning where heaven opens and you step into what no man could have orchestrated, no system could have provided, and no strategy could have achieved. This is the morning of supernatural provision, the kind that doesn't make sense, the kind that breaks every law of logic, the kind that proves God was never late, He was preparing, because God doesn't waste hunger, He doesn't overlook endurance. He doesn't forget the night you cried yourself to sleep. He doesn't ignore the silence you sat in when you could have escaped, but chose to stay. Heaven takes note of every tear, every prayer whispered in weakness, every breath of faith drawn through exhaustion. And when morning comes, it doesn't come small, it comes full. Think of the widow who had nothing left. Just a jar of oil and a little flour. The famine had drained everything. Her cupboards were bare. Her hope was hanging by a thread. But she obeyed. She gave what little she had. And then what happened? The jar never ran out. The oil kept flowing. Morning came, not because the situation changed, but because obedience unlocked the supernatural, or the disciples out on the sea. They toiled all night, professionals, experts, they knew how to fish, but that night the system failed. All their skill, all their effort came up empty, until the voice said from the shore, "Cast your net on the other side." And when they obeyed, the net almost broke from the blessing. The morning had come, not because they worked harder, but because they listened, because they endured, because they didn't leave the water just because the fish weren't biting, and when God moved, it was beyond what they could contain. This is what the morning of supernatural provision looks like. It's not just enough, it's overflow. It's pressed down, shaken together, and running over. It's not scraps from heaven's table, it's the feast God prepared while you were still in the fire. But here's the part we often miss. The miracle comes after the breaking. You want resurrection. There must first be a cross. You want the oil, the olive must be crushed. You want the bread of heaven, then the dough must be kneaded, the fire must burn, and the loaf must rise. So don't despise the starvation. It's the proof that God is preparing something deeper, something heavier, something holier. And when morning comes, you'll look back on the night, not with bitterness, but with awe. You'll say, if I hadn't starved, I never would have been filled like this. If I hadn't been emptied, I never could have received what He's giving me now. You'll understand that the delay wasn't denial, it was divine design. Because God doesn't just want to give you provision, He wants to change your palate. He wants to shift what you crave. He wants to wean you off the temporal so you can finally taste the eternal. And when that happens, when you stop chasing what the world feeds on and start hungering for righteousness, for truth, for the weight of His glory, you'll walk into mornings others only dream about. You'll see doors open that no man can shut. You'll stand in places you were never qualified to enter. You'll carry peace in storms and joy in trials, and strength that doesn't come from sleep, but from surrender. And you'll know deep in your bones that this wasn't the work of man. This wasn't your strength. This wasn't a system. This was the morning after starvation. This was God.